People often grow up hearing that money is the answer to everything. From a young age, we're taught that if you study hard, work hard, and earn enough, life will become easier, smoother, and maybe even perfect. Money can buy comfort. It can buy safety. It can open doors that remain closed to others. It can place someone in a position where their voice carries more weight and their presence demands attention. Over time, this idea becomes so deeply rooted that many begin to believe money doesn't just help in life, it controls life. But reality has a way of quietly reminding us that there are limits to what money can actually do. There are moments where wealth stands still, powerless, unable to solve what truly matters. Health is one of those things. No matter how rich someone is, they cannot simply walk into a store and purchase more time or a guaranteed cure. They can afford the best doctors, the most advanced treatments, and the most comfortable environments, but none of that comes with certainty. Life does not operate on a price list, and not everything valuable has a cost attached to it. Emotions are another space where money fails to hold control. Genuine love, loyalty, trust, and respect cannot be bought in their purest forms. People may stay for benefits or appearances, but real connection cannot be forced through wealth. A person surrounded by luxury can still feel completely alone because emotional fulfillment does not depend on material possessions. Then there is dignity and self-respect. These are deeply personal and cannot be handed over in exchange for money unless someone chooses to give them up. When someone believes that money can buy anything, they often underestimate others. They assume everyone has a price, that every decision can be influenced, and every person can be persuaded if the offer is high enough. This mindset creates a dangerous disconnect from reality. It builds arrogance, a belief that power is permanent and control is guaranteed. But life doesn't follow those assumptions. It constantly presents situations where money loses its authority. Moments where character matters more than currency, where courage outweighs wealth, and where a simple, firm decision can challenge even the richest individual. It is in these moments that the illusion begins to break. The idea that money is the ultimate solution starts to fade when faced with someone who values something greater. It might be integrity, purpose, or belief in oneself. When a person stands firm and refuses to be influenced by wealth, it sends a powerful message. It shows that not everything is for sale. It reminds everyone watching that value is not always measured in numbers. Sometimes, the most powerful position in a situation belongs to the person who has nothing to lose and everything to stand for. Money may create opportunities, but it does not define worth. It may solve problems, but not all of them. It may influence people, but not everyone. Understanding this difference is what separates those who truly see the world from those who are blinded by wealth. The billionaire had spent his entire life surrounded by wealth, and over time, that wealth had shaped the way he saw the world. Every problem he had ever faced came with a solution that could be purchased, negotiated, or controlled. If something broke, he replaced it. If someone disagreed, he outbid them. If a door was closed, he found another way in using influence or money. Slowly, without even realizing it, he began to believe that this pattern applied to everything, that nothing existed beyond the reach of his financial power. This belief didn't just stay in his mind. It showed in the way he spoke, the way he treated others, and the way he carried himself. There was a certain cold confidence in his tone, a quiet assumption that he was always in control of the situation. He didn't ask, he offered. He didn't request, he proposed deals. Every interaction became a transaction in his eyes. People around him noticed it, but few ever challenged it. Most accepted it because it benefited them, or because they felt too small to question someone so powerful. Over time, this created a bubble around him, one where his perspective was never corrected. No one told him that not everything could be bought. No one reminded him that there are limits to what money can do. Instead, his belief grew stronger, reinforced by every successful deal and every problem solved with wealth. When he walked into that hospital room, he carried that same mindset with him. Even in a place where vulnerability was supposed to exist, where life and health were uncertain, he approached the situation like a negotiation. To him, It wasn't a matter of possibility or humanity. It was simply a matter of price. His offer, "If you cure me, I'll give you 1 million," wasn't just a statement. It was a reflection of how he saw the world. He believed the number itself carried power, that the size of the reward would automatically guarantee compliance, effort, and success. There was no hesitation in his voice because he didn't expect resistance. He assumed that anyone in the boy's position would immediately agree, overwhelmed by the amount being offered. This is where arrogance begins to show its true nature. It is not always loud or aggressive. Sometimes it is quiet and composed, hidden behind calm words and confident expressions. It is the assumption that others think the same way, want the same things, and will respond in predictable ways when presented with money. The billionaire did not consider the boy's perspective. He did not think about what the boy valued, what he believed in, or how he might interpret the situation. In his mind, the deal was already accepted the moment it was spoken. This kind of thinking reduces people to numbers, turning human interaction into a simple exchange. It removes the complexity of emotion, belief, and individuality. The billionaire wasn't trying to understand. He was trying to control the outcome before it even began. His arrogance came from a lifetime of never being challenged in this belief. But arrogance has a weakness. It depends on others playing along. The moment someone refuses to follow that pattern, the entire illusion begins to crack. When someone doesn't react the way you expect, when they don't value what you offer in the same way, it creates a shift. It forces a moment of realization, whether immediate or delayed. The billionaire, standing there with complete confidence in his offer, had no idea that he was about to face that exact moment. The boy did not look like someone who held any kind of power. Sitting quietly in that hospital room, he seemed small, fragile, almost invisible in the presence of a man whose name alone carried influence. There were no signs of wealth around him, no indicators of status, no reason for anyone to assume that his words could carry weight in a conversation like this. And yet, there was something about him that did not match his circumstances. It wasn't loud or obvious. It didn't demand attention. It existed in the way he sat, the way he listened, and the way he remained completely unaffected by the atmosphere in the room. While others might have felt intimidated, overwhelmed, or even grateful just to be acknowledged, the boy showed none of that. His calm presence suggested something deeper, something that couldn't be measured by appearance or situation. When the billionaire spoke, offering 1 million as if it were the simplest solution in the world, the boy didn't react the way most people would expect. There was no widening of the eyes, no sudden excitement, no visible shift in his expression. He didn't lean forward with interest or rush to respond. Instead, he remained still, as if the number itself had no impact on him. This was where his quiet confidence began to reveal itself. Confidence is often mistaken for loudness, for bold declarations, or dominating energy. But real confidence doesn't need to prove itself. It doesn't rush to fill silence or seek validation from others. It exists quietly, grounded in certainty. The boy's silence was not hesitation. It was control. It showed that he was not being pulled into the billionaire's frame of thinking. He was not reacting to the money, because his focus was somewhere else entirely. There was a sense that he already understood something the billionaire did not. That he saw the situation from a different angle, one that didn't revolve around wealth or influence. His confidence came from within, not from what he had, but from what he believed. It allowed him to sit in that moment without pressure, without fear, and without the need to impress. Even though he had every reason to feel small in comparison, he didn't carry himself that way. There was no trace of insecurity in his posture or his expression. He didn't try to match the billionaire's presence, and he didn't shrink away from it either. He simply existed in his own space, unaffected by the imbalance around him. This kind of confidence is rare because it doesn't rely on external factors. It cannot be given, and it cannot be taken away. It is built through understanding oneself, through clarity of thought, and through a strong sense of purpose. The boy's calm reaction disrupted the natural flow of the situation. The billionaire expected a response shaped by desire or need, but instead, he was met with stillness. That stillness carried meaning. It suggested that the boy was not operating under the same assumptions, that he did not see the offer as something overwhelming or irresistible. In that moment, without saying a word, the boy shifted the balance of power in the room. Not by force, not by argument, but simply by refusing to react the way he was expected to. His quiet confidence created a tension that could not be ignored. It made the billionaire's certainty feel less absolute, less secure. Because when someone cannot predict your reaction, they lose a part of their control. The boy didn't need to raise his voice or challenge the offer directly. His composure was enough to create doubt, enough to make the situation feel different from what it was supposed to be. At first glance, the offer sounded simple. A straightforward exchange. A cure in return for money. The kind of deal that fits neatly into the billionaire's understanding of how the world works. He believed he had already defined the terms, already set the direction of the conversation. In his mind, the outcome was predictable. The boy would agree, motivated by the amount, and everything would move forward under his control. But what he failed to realize was that not every deal is shaped by the person who speaks first. Sometimes, the true nature of a deal is hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be revealed by the one who refuses to accept it as presented. The boy didn't interrupt, didn't argue, didn't question the offer right away. He let it sit in the air, as if giving it space to reveal its own limitations. This pause was subtle, but it changed the rhythm of the moment. Instead of rushing into agreement, he allowed the weight of the billionaire's words to settle, exposing the assumption behind them. The assumption that money was the most important factor, that it was enough to define the value of what was being asked. But the boy understood something different. To him, the deal was not just about the reward being offered. It was about what was being overlooked. It was about the imbalance between what the billionaire wanted and what he believed he could give in return. The offer focused on the outcome, but ignored the process, the effort, and the deeper meaning behind it. The boy saw that this was not just a transaction. It was an attempt to simplify something that could not be reduced to numbers. By staying calm and composed, he created space to redefine the situation. He did not reject the deal outright, and he did not accept it as it was. Instead, he positioned himself in a way that allowed him to shift its meaning. This is where the nature of the deal began to change. It was no longer controlled by the billionaire's expectations. It became something uncertain, something that could not be easily predicted. The boy's perspective introduced a new layer, one that challenged the idea that everything could be negotiated in the same way. A deal is only as strong as the understanding behind it. If one side assumes too much, if they fail to recognize the full picture, the deal becomes unstable. The billionaire believed he was offering something valuable, but he did not consider whether it was truly enough. He measured value in money, but the boy measured it differently. This difference in perspective is what turned a simple offer into something more complex. It revealed that the deal was never equal to begin with, that it carried an imbalance not in power, but in understanding. The boy's quiet control over the moment allowed this imbalance to surface without confrontation. He didn't need to argue or explain it directly. His approach forced the situation to evolve on its own. As the seconds passed, the certainty that once filled the room began to shift. The deal was no longer clear. It was no longer guaranteed. It existed in a space where expectations could be challenged and redefined. The boy held that space without rushing to fill it, allowing the weight of the moment to grow. In doing so, he turned what seemed like a simple transaction into something far more significant, something that could no longer be controlled by money alone in that room. The difference between the two was not just wealth or status, it was what each of them valued at their core. The billionaire saw the world through numbers, through gain and loss, through what could be exchanged and measured. For him, value was something that could be increased, negotiated, and controlled. But the boy operated on something entirely different. His sense of value did not come from money or reward. It came from within, shaped by belief, clarity, and an understanding of what truly matters. Courage is often misunderstood as something dramatic, something loud or visible in big actions. But in reality, courage can be quiet. It can exist in the simple act of standing firm when everything around you is trying to push you in another direction. The boy showed that kind of courage, not by raising his voice or rejecting the billionaire outright, but by not being influenced by the offer in front of him. He did not allow the size of the reward to define his response. That takes a different kind of strength, the kind that comes from knowing who you are and what you stand for. Self-belief played an even deeper role in that moment. The boy trusted his own judgment, even in a situation where most would doubt themselves. Sitting across from someone so powerful, it would have been easy to feel small, to question whether his thoughts even mattered. But he didn't fall into that pattern. He didn't look for approval or reassurance. His confidence came from within, not from how others saw him. This kind of self-belief creates independence. It allows a person to think clearly, to make decisions based on their own values rather than external pressure. When someone has that level of clarity, they become difficult to influence. Not because they are stubborn, but because they are grounded. They understand the difference between what is being offered and what is truly important. The boy recognized that the situation was not about money. It was about something much deeper, something that required more than a financial exchange. By staying true to his perspective, he protected that understanding. He did not let it be replaced by the billionaire's way of thinking. This is where true value begins to reveal itself. It is not in what you can gain, but in what you refuse to give up. Integrity becomes more important than reward. Purpose becomes stronger than temptation. These are things that cannot be bought because they are not external. They exist within a person, built over time through choices and experiences. The billionaire, despite all his wealth, lacked this kind of value in that moment. Not because he was incapable of it, but because he had spent so long relying on money that he had forgotten there were other forms of strength. The boy, with nothing in comparison, held something far more powerful. He had the ability to remain unaffected, to see beyond the surface, and to respond in a way that reflected his true beliefs. This contrast between them highlighted a simple truth. Wealth can create influence, but it cannot replace character. It can open doors, but it cannot define what a person stands for. The boy's courage and self-belief created a shift that money could not achieve. It changed the tone of the situation, not through force, but through presence. It showed that true strength is not always visible, and true value is not always measurable. There are moments in life that pass quietly, almost unnoticed at first, but carry a weight that changes everything that follows. This was one of those moments. Nothing dramatic happened on the surface. No sudden movement, no raised voices, no visible shift that an outsider could easily point to. And yet, something in the room had already begun to change. The air felt different, heavier, as if the balance that once seemed so certain was no longer stable. The billionaire, who had entered with complete control, now stood in a space where that control was no longer guaranteed. It wasn't taken from him forcefully. It simply slipped, piece by piece, as the situation unfolded in a way he did not expect. The boy, without doing anything extraordinary in appearance, became the center of that shift. His presence, his stillness, and his refusal to react in predictable ways created a moment that could not be ignored. When he finally spoke, those few words carried more weight than the entire offer that had been placed before him. Prepare the check. It was not said with excitement or urgency. It wasn't a reaction driven by the promise of money. It was calm, measured, and deliberate. That is what made it powerful. In that simple response, he did something the billionaire had not prepared for. He accepted the structure of the deal, but not the control behind it. The words sounded like agreement, but they held a deeper meaning. They shifted the responsibility, turning the certainty of the billionaire into something that now required action, commitment, and belief. The billionaire had spoken from a place of assumption, expecting compliance. But now, he was faced with a response that mirrored his own confidence, without carrying his arrogance. It forced him into a position where his words were no longer just an offer. They became a promise that needed to be honored. This is where the true change began to take shape. The power dynamic in the room was no longer one-sided. It became balanced in a way that could not be measured by wealth or status. The boy had stepped into a position of control without demanding it. He had done it by understanding the moment better than the person who believed he owned it. This kind of shift is rare because it doesn't rely on force or authority. It happens when one person sees beyond the surface and responds with clarity. The billionaire, for the first time, was no longer certain of the outcome. His usual advantage, his ability to predict and control situations through money, was no longer reliable. That uncertainty created a crack in his confidence, a moment where he had to face the possibility that he was not in complete control. The boy's response did not just change the conversation, it changed the meaning behind it. It turned a simple offer into a test of truth, a moment where words had consequences and assumptions could no longer stand on their own. In that quiet exchange, something deeper was revealed, not through explanation, not through argument, but through a single line delivered with complete certainty. The kind of moment that doesn't announce itself as important, but leaves a lasting impact on everyone who witnesses it.